Hello, everyone. I am Debbie, and I am here on behalf of the NCGR Florida Atlantic Chapter. And I am super excited to be here with Jason Holley. He is going to be visiting us here in sunny Florida. And he is going to be doing this amazing, amazing workshop. Like, I cannot wait for this. But before we tell you about the workshop, which is going to be like off the charts, let's just find out a little bit about Jason. Jason, so you're coming from the West Coast, right?
Indeed. Yes, I am. I am. And the rainy wet coast at the moment and the cold wet coast. So I'm very excited to be in a place where someone can wear what you're wearing and feel comfortable.
Yes, I hope we have good weather for you.
Me
You know what
too.
I love about Jason? Like, we have a lot of snowbirds in Florida, all come from the Northeast, but
Mm.
Jason's like a snowbird of the West, right? You're like California, New Mexico, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I'm based in Santa Fe, and then, in the winters we try to be somewhere else. Ever since Zoom made it possible to do things from all over. So right now we're in the San Francisco Bay Area in Sausalito, and I'm actually looking out at the water right now at Angel Island, which is like the one little island in the whole area that's not developed, like no houses, no people, like so it's really nice to be able to like get a relief from all the people. Uh,
Yes.
so yeah, we're here for a few months, which has been great. It's been a really special, very moist. It's very dry where I live. So
Yes, we got to get all four elements in, you
yeah,
know?
yeah, well
Right?
said. Right. Yeah,
I,
exactly.
I just went skiing in Utah because I was like, I got to get to the mountains. I got to feel some earth. I got to see. I get a lot of water, although I do put my feet in the sand.
Mm,
Uh,
grounding.
yes, grounding. So when I was looking to learn a little bit more about you, I have to tell you, I was fascinated at how you came into astrology. Like I want you to share it with everyone because not everyone has this. Like my mom has no freaking clue what I do.
Right.
She's like, I don't know, my daughter's like an astrologer or something. Tell us.
Yeah, well, I was really born into it. So I grew up in West Virginia, and I actually, when I was born, there were five generations living at the same time in one house. And it was
Wow.
actually basically a matriarchy. I mean, they wouldn't have called it that, but it was my mother, her mother, her mother, her mother, and then me. So it was my great great grandmother lived with us, and everybody was fluent in astrology. Like none of them were professional astrologers, but they, like my grandmother was probably my first person who shared more of it with me, and she could erect a chart and understood it. My great great grandmother Cumby, she was a tea leaf reader, and people would come from all over the hills in West Virginia to have her look at their cups. So kind of just born into this wild world of astrologers and astrology. And the real turning point was when I found all these metaphysical books when I was 12, because we were also kind of an odd combo. We were also very intense Southern Baptist, like fundamentalist Christian
Wow.
situation. So, it would sort of be like undercover astrology. So there was a cabinet of forbidden books, which, of course means you're going to read them. And they were all these metaphysical texts, and like some of our classic astrologer authors like Dane Rudhyar, Isabel Hickey. So I was reading all that at like 12, and then started doing charts and teaching classes in my high school. I made an astrology board game that everybody loved
Wow.
playing. Like we just had a lot of fun with it, and it's been with me ever since. And then I, really began to, do readings for people like from like about 17, 16, 17. So it's been a long time. That's like, gosh, that's a long time. I don't want to think.
Don't worry, I'm not going to ask you how old you are. I won't ask you about any of your generational planets, so
I
we
was going to
can't
say, we
get
have
that.
our ways to find out, don't we?
Yeah, I won't ask you. I do know you're a Libra,
I'm a Libra. Yeah. Yeah. Many
right?
planets in Libra. Yeah.
We got stellium Libra, Scorpio moon, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And
And
Cancer
Cancer.
rising.
Yeah.
Awesome. I mean, I'm just thinking this because I have, a lot of students or group members that say to me like they struggle with the like religion versus with the astrology. Like they're like, oh my, I'm learning that my religion doesn't believe in this. Like, how did you deal with that?
Well, I think the deeper message that I was receiving from my family based on how they lived rather than what they said was, follow what you experience as your own truth. And I do think that that they wouldn't have used language like that. That was not really the way we would have been talking. But what I saw was that although they were attending the service and going through that, and there was some sincere belief in some parts of that, but like the rules and all that we weren't really following. And my grandmother, I mean, the first question wasn't, is your friend a Christian? The first question was, is your friend a Pisces moon? We were in West Virginia, right? So it was a little like superstitious type astrology. Like, I don't want you hanging out with these, water sign, this and that, or air sign, whatever. There
Right.
were some very strong biases and stuff like that. Um, so I think we were living from a bigger world than we were speaking from, if that makes sense. And
Yeah.
so for me, it was easy for the things that didn't match who I am to drop away. And the astrology is what has never got dropped away. It's just because you know how astrology is, it's endlessly alive. It is
Right.
endlessly invites us into new understanding of life. It's not stuck or into one doctrine. And when astrologers get stuck in one doctrine or one technique, they start to feel boring and kind of just cycling, and
Right.
so I have kind of been I feel like I'm in a constant learning, but there's some foundations that are very like in my body from growing up in that, that are just really like direct experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well, you are lucky. You're like blessed to have a family like that embraced all of this.
yeah, no,
And I'm sure you've looked at all their charts to see like the pattern coming up,
yes.
right?
And you wouldn't be surprised, right? It's a lot of Uranian energy through the family, and it had the other side of that too, chaos and crazy and psychosis, and it has had the full range of Uranian reality, but also again, kind of people who were not going to fit into the boxes. They just
Right.
weren't. And some of them would try to put themselves in the box and eventually, poke out or, you know, go do things that were, not authorized by the
Right.
Saturn culture all around us.
Wow. That is so awesome. So now, so I'm picturing this, you're this, like you're this young kid and you're like, well, I'm into astrology. And back then it was like not well, right? Not well known, right?
Mhm.
And we didn't even have, they probably, your grandmother or great grandmother was probably casting charts, like she had to like draw it out. There wasn't
Yeah, that's what I do. That I learned to do it that way long before the computers. I didn't even have a program for, gosh, I guess the late 90s. It probably is when I found software or, online astro.com
right.
type of stuff. Yeah.
Oh
So
my
yeah, no,
God.
it was all by hand. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So like the old school. That's what I used to tell people with the computers. I'm like, now you can write any program. I used to have to deal with zeros and ones.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're go on this journey and you're like doing this astrology, but then somewhere you decided to start doing like psychotherapy or something, right?
Yeah, yeah. About 15 years ago, or maybe a little more, I went to grad school to be a psychotherapist, and then astrology was integrated in my practice the whole way through. So, when I was working with people, I would always have their birth information available and have their chart along the way, and
Right.
the way that I always have looked at that is it was like the chart is almost like this wise elder who's also in the room with your therapist and the client.
Yeah.
And at times when we need a way of seeing things that we can't quite see with, the usual ways, here's this elder sitting in the corner who tells you a story, tells you the story of your Mars, or tells you the story, and it helps. And you know how in a traditional culture, like the elder story, they don't tell you do this or do that, right?
Right,
Charts don't, I don't feel that the chart does that. What I think
right,
it does is shares a story which activates your creative, ideas, and gives you ways of seeing your life situation. So astrology has been in the room with me, with clients the whole way through. And it's just such a natural complement to that kind of work, especially when you want to go to deeper material. Having that chart to hold the story in a bigger way lets people go places that maybe they wouldn't go if you were using a lot of like diagnostic language or clinical stuff. It's not that
right.
things are bad, but a lot
Mm.
of times they're boxes, and we're kind of encouraging people to get bigger views because we're such complex creatures.
Of course, right? And the Uranian part of you is like, we've got to go out of the box.
Yeah,
Be in this box.
and you know what? The beauty of astrology is that it really, the first thing you see when you see an astrological chart is that no one is one thing. Everybody's multiple, right? Everybody's a multiple personality, right? Everybody has what I call like an ecosystem inside the psyche. Like that whole chart is like your inner ecosystem. And zodiac, you had mentioned before we started to record, one of my favorite reminders to us all is that zodiac means circle of animals. That's literally what it means. And it's basically saying we, of course, are part of circles of animals and plants and relations, but also within ourselves are this whole circle of animals, different creatures that the different planets show us, and they all need habitat. Just like out in the outer ecosystem, it goes out of balance if you don't find ways for them to all be part of it. It's similar in the inner ecosystem. If we don't let certain parts of ourselves express and move and have a place to live in our lives, we end up out of balance. And that's why my work is a lot about feeling the various creatures within and finding habitat for them in your life, whatever that means. Yeah, like
That's so cool.
whatever
Yeah, 'cause you're working. I saw that. I was like, when I saw that you were working on this book, Circle of Animals, I'm like, oh my God, that sounds so interesting.
Mm,
And
yeah.
so in the book, is that what you're gonna do? Are you gonna like kind of take people through each of the different are you gonna do it by the zodiac sign or
Well, there's a one book that I'm doing is called Constellations of Meaning. And so that is going to be the 12 signs. But what I'm doing is working with the Greek and Roman myths of each of the signs, because people often don't even know the stories that are behind the signs. And so I'm sharing the stories. Then I'm also sharing how we can how the stories help us understand the psychology of the sign, like really the dynamics, the deeper dynamics of it. Like the
yeah,
plot points in the myth are also action templates that people live out in their lives. And then also sharing case studies from my psychotherapy practice of people living those myths in their lives. And also really important, like dreaming the myth onward. So what we often find is that like with the Greeks and the Romans, they constantly tell us the myths of Greece and Rome are not myths that are like, do this, they're not like a moral of the story is,
right,
they actually are usually everybody making a mess of things, and including the gods. And it's mostly showing you the dilemmas that humans get into. It's showing our dilemmas. But once we get inside that dream, we can actually dream it forward. We can say, well, what if Hercules, instead of killing the crab that represented this cancer, what if Hercules let the crab take him down into the lake and then went to the underworld with him, just as an example?
right.
Or what if, just it's like opening the myth up a little bit. And so that book is that way. The living in the circle of animals work is really about what we're going to do at our workshop, which is to say, to really engage with an experiential way the different places in your own chart and become the one who has a lived connection, like to really feel in your body, your emotions, your perception, your relatedness with others, what it's like when Mars is forward in you, or what it's like when the moon is forward in you. And so that one is going to be a lot about how to connect with those different, creatures. I use a lot of, I used to be, before I moved into the therapy domain, I was an environmental activist for quite a while and lived
Oh.
in India for a long time and did a lot of work there. And what I realized is like the unifying thing between being an activist and a therapist, or an environmental and therapist, was, creating and protecting and restoring habitat for creatures. That it's like
Mhm.
the outer world creatures and that other work. And then my consulting room, I feel like, is a place where people get to experience new dimensions of themselves, right? Like,
Right.
yeah. So
That's so cool. So when you were talking about the first book, the Constellations, and like what, right? That was the what if, right? What if, you know,
yeah, like getting
and,
in, getting into the
and
dream and then imagining it onward. Yeah.
it's funny because I'm a big Broadway girl, Broadway show girl, and
Ah,
I was
yeah.
just thinking like of the ones that are out there right now, like Juliet. Like, what if she didn't, kill, in this
Yeah.
version, right? What
Right.
if she didn't kill herself? What if she's like, oh, girl power, right? Stuff, things like that. And I have to tell you, like, I've seen Hades Town a zillion times, and I keep hoping that the ending changes. I keep thinking to myself, I'm like, this time. I don't want to ruin it for people who haven't seen it, but anyway. So it's interesting to see like some of the like when I saw Hades Town, like the characters just in play, of it, because I'm fascinated by the mythology of it all. Like I love the stories, and I think people remember through story,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Like if you give them just the black and white,
Right.
they're like, right, it doesn't process the same as the
Yeah.
story
Yeah, exactly. No,
and the
that's
essence
the
of the
thing.
story.
That's what will stay with someone is the story, or an image from the story, or more than just psychological language or functional language. I mean, why do we turn to the stars, right? It's a whole field of story and of dream. And
Yeah.
so part of this is like getting in there and being in the dream, being, in the experience. And
Let's talk about that.
yeah.
Let's talk about the
Yeah.
ending experience. So, for those that don't know, Jason is going to be coming to us in South Florida on February 17th. February 17th,
Yeah.
Saturday. We're going to have such a fun day. So, I want, because this is it, they're going to be living through this experience. So, can you like give us a little insight? Because I'm going to just back up for a second. Like when I read about how you use this experiential learning, like
Mhm.
that was like up my wheelhouse, right? I've done a lot of stuff with that and I love it because I think you learn just the same way you learn from a story, you learn from these experiences, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And so I want, there might be people out there that don't really know what that all means, right? That aren't familiar with it. So could you just like share like what made you decide to like put that, right? But because that's unique, right? Your approach is unique. There's not like many astrologers out there doing this type of thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
So this is a
exactly.
this is a special opportunity. This is not going to be your typical workshop where you got your notepad out and you're writing notes down. No, this is a workshop where you are in the game. You're
Yeah,
in the game. So
I think
tell
that's
us, Jason. I
I
can't,
think
I want to know.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's important to say. Like yeah, I mean, there will be moments where you might want to take a note or something, because there'll be experiences that you have where you want to be like, oh yeah, But yes, exactly. This is an astrology that is basically, getting out of the chart and into the body, and not just the body, but the whole imagination, the whole way we move and live in the world. So rather than talk about the planets, we will talk to the planets. We will let the planets talk to us. So talking about it is fine, right? That we all do it. But it kind of removes you from things. It's just very similar to like most astrologers are looking at charts and math equations and all that. We're kind of moving that to the side and just saying, let's just get in there and feel it together. So the kinds of things that looks like, It looks like a little bit of like guided imagery, visualization type of stuff. Sometimes it looks like art making and art making doesn't mean you have to be an artist, right? It just
All
means the
right.
of drawing or that kind of thing. Sometimes it's writing prompts where you're invited to write as the planet or as a part of your chart. Sometimes we are doing movement where we might walk around the wheel of the chart, or I might tell you a myth about Aquarius, and then we act it out in the room. And then while we're acting it out, we ask ourselves, which planet am I? You sort of discover it in the moment. Astrodrama, where you play Venus and that person plays Saturn squaring your Venus, and you find out how they are interacting and also how they could change their interaction, like what might be different. Um, it's a full range of stuff.
And are we going to get to do all of this?
Well, no, but I'm
Oh,
just giving the full range of
okay.
what is
I'm like,
what
that's a
we could do.
lot.
We'll do, I think, quite a few of those. So one of the
Okay.
things I want to say, because I don't want people to come feeling like you have to be an extrovert and you have to like jump in and do all
Yes.
this stuff, because that's not how everybody participates, and that's totally okay. Like I will very quickly do some things to understand what are people ready to do, and we will pitch it to a place that is really workable for the room.
Okay.
So this is something where you don't have to be warmed up to be really out there and vulnerable. There will always be a few people in the room who probably are, and that's also great. But you could also be a lot of time in the witnessing role, and that's totally fine. Like, or you might, what it will be practicing is actually a really important skill, which is like, how do you connect and let yourself get inside the chart? It's almost like, when I see a chart with a client, one of the things I do almost every time is I really take a minute to look at the chart and to imagine that we're under the sky that I see on this chart, right? Just to imagine, oh, there's Venus in the east and there's the sun in the first house
Mhm.
about to rise. And, just to get under there together and get in there and then feel it. Or I might look at an aspect that looks difficult, like Uranus opposite the moon, and I might just take a minute to feel like, what is that moon like? It's looking over there at Uranus, and Uranus is doing whatever. I might see an image of Uranus, like, I don't know, in Capricorn or something, disrupting all the structure. And if I'm the moon over there looking at that, I'm like, like that's a little, whew.
All
And
right.
you can feel it, right? And that'd be a Cancer moon, the way I just set it up. So
Yeah.
it's like, but when you get in there and feel it, you can speak in a different way to the client about it also. Or
Yeah.
if it doesn't have to be for a professional astrologer, you can feel it like, oh, there's a part of me that is, feels there's a constant disruption of the structure. And I'm always trying to feel secure. I reach out for this and that, and it just, pulls the rug out from under me again and again. So,
Mhm.
so, an astrologer could say the same thing without getting into the roles. But when you're
Right.
speaking from the field, it's a completely different experience, right? When you're inside the field instead of talking about the field. So, and you
Right.
get information in a way that it's never going to leave you. Like kind of the way that I did. I think this is why I love this method, is because I grew up most of them were not technique heavy astrologers, right? I mean, my grandmother could erect a chart, but they wouldn't do these complex analysis that I think is great and we can all do, or whoever wants to. But what they had that I think was so special is they had a really embodied understanding of the archetypes. Like they knew Taurus, like when Taurus was in the
Right.
room, they know that's what they're dealing with, or they
Right.
know a Saturn aspect.
Right.
And so in a way, even though I learned all this technique and I have studied them all, to be honest, or an awful lot of them, and use them all. But the thing that I'm kind of refractory to all that stuff, because
Right.
I'm no, no, no. A lot of, if I'm at an astrology conference, people are up here talking in their head about the chart. I just kind of check out. Like I want to be in it. I'm a sun.
I hear
So
ya. Right? They come and they give you all this, like, oh my God, I'm doomed. My Mars is this, Venus is that. And you're just like, okay. Right.
right, and that's actually what we're going to focus on at the workshop is the planets that you maybe feel like are the bad ones or the hard ones, or they're, so there's all these different things that doctrine tells us, right? Like, oh, planets in the eighth house, or the 12th is the bad spirit, or the eighth house is frightening, or planets that are opposing things or squaring things, or planets that are debilitated, like in fall or
Right.
detriment, or endless ways to think
Yeah,
about
intercepted. I get the
it.
people like,
Well, yeah, intercepted. Well, it'll be
oh
different. We'll all come in with our own ones where we're like,
no.
or maybe we just maybe we just feel like that's my trouble planet. I've always had trouble with relationships. I'm not speaking for me. Well, maybe, but I've always had trouble with relationships. My Venus is, whatever. So this will be a chance to give the planet a chance to share with about itself rather than the technique
Mhm.
being put on it. It's sort of like, what's the inner reality of that planet? So again, I want to say it's like the work is fun and alive, but beyond also fun, it's also there's depth possible. Like because you really will when you get inside there, you don't really know what you'll find, right? That's the
Right.
when we really get past the concepts, a lot of things are in there, and that's why for therapeutic work, and this isn't going to be a
Right.
therapy session, but for therapeutic work, it really opens up a lot of avenues, including to trauma or to you know um, patterns that are really people want to
Right.
change. Yeah,
Totally. I mean, it's like it's giving people a chance to get out of their brain
yeah,
and actually feel it. So
exactly.
instead of approaching the chart from a logical standpoint, which is
Right,
what people do, right? Because people, especially that are new to astrology, they Google, right? They Google like, oh, my Mars is square Saturn,
right, right,
and
right.
they get this like written definition of what that is, and then it's like they're trying to figure out how it what that means for them. And
Mhm.
in this case, it sounds like they're gonna feel it, like the embodiment of
Yeah.
what it feel like
What does
for
it feel like, and what does it want to do? What are its urges and desires? Like, what is it longing for? What is the longing? What does it need that it isn't receiving? That maybe you will learn more of what it's wanting, or what gifts does it hold for you that you haven't yet received? And there's so many. What will happen is like as I don't design the day, except I have all these methods to kind of bring in at the moment, whatever we really are going to see what comes in the room. So, for instance, a lot of
Mm,
times someone's had a dream the night before and shares the dream, and we just get into that dream, and that opens the day up. It's going to be very open-ended.
right. We're gonna go with the flow.
Exactly, very much so. Just like we do, I think that's what good astrology does with a chart. When a person walks in, if you've written down everything you're going to tell them, that's fine, but you might be really missing out if you don't hear from them. Here's what's important to me, or and
Right.
then you realize, oh, I've written down 30 aspects, but the only one I really need to talk about is this, Neptune squaring the moon. That's what's really like messing with the person. And
Yeah.
really stay in one place, like Neptune square the moon. Like, what's it feel like to be Neptune? Maybe the mythology of Neptune. Neptune's the guy who made Odysseus wander the seas for 10 years, in the Odyssey,
Right.
trying to get back. And that's often what a Neptune transit feels like. It feels like it goes on forever. You're constantly being shipwrecked. you know, anything you do is, but you're also having kind of wild spiritual experiences and meeting sorceresses and witches and, amazing creatures in your own unconscious during a Neptune
Right.
transit. So, and then you feel like, but what that's like for the moon, like she's over there receiving that. And again, like, trying to have a home, have a sense of safety. And how do you respect that? So it's just getting into the dynamics of it
Right.
internally. And then it's very powerful to do this work with others in a group, so we can do all the things we're
Right.
talking about can be done one-on-one.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
you can stop someone in a reading and just help them and like tell them a little myth and ask them which part
Yeah.
capture their attention, and do they want to practice, stringing the, being Artemis with her bow, and do they want to just do that and feel what it feels like, right? Or imagine you're a centaur like Chiron, like, and that's how people realize like, oh, centaurs are kind of awkward animals.
Right. Yeah.
It's, and Sagittarians are clumsy, right? Like, so you think about Sagittarius, so you get it from the inside, it's just different. And then, when you get it from there, it's magic. But what I was going to say is, like, when you're in a group, the power of that is that to see other people step into your planets, or and
Yeah.
and to see it is very validating. Like, so some people would compare this work to like family constellations. There'll be people who know
Yes.
what that is, or I'm a psychodramatist by training, so there's a lineage of psychodrama where basically people play roles in other people's lives. So maybe
Right.
you're my mother and you're this, or my workplace, or like you were sharing about in your past consulting career, doing things like who killed creativity? Was it the CEO, or that's a psychodrama process, basically, right? Because then
Right,
somebody,
right.
CEO killing creativity with throwing paperwork all over it. I used to work in
Yeah.
hospitals, and the nurses hated paperwork. And one of the dramas that we did was like someone played paperwork. It was like you
Oh,
have to
wow.
do, and got right in front of between the nurse and the patient and the drama, and was like, you can't go anywhere before you deal with
Right,
me.
right.
And that's, who is that in astrology, right? There's our Saturn, right? Or, like, or some sort of like, heavy duty Virgo planet or something that's just like, you can't do anything till you got through me. And when we do that for each other in our charts, like it's a profound generosity to each other. Like, you're really giving the person a feeling of like, oh yeah, that's my inner reality. It's hard to describe how powerful that can be. I mean, people have a lot of really deep experiences, and it's like, as you said, it's not up here. It will migrate here too. It'll inform the
Right.
brain and head, and but it'll deepen your astrology practice, because I'll never forget some of the things I've seen. Like, I have all the myths because that's my total love, but I also
Right.
have hundreds of astrodramas, hundreds of pieces of art people have made. And I see Mercury conjunct Pluto, I immediately think of an astrodrama where it was Pluto, Mercury conjunct in Scorpio, and Mercury in Scorpio was played by one person, Pluto by the other. And all that happened in the drama was Pluto would point down to the ground and tell Mercury, dig. And then Mercury would go,
Ah,
Mercury would go digging and would pull something up and say, here's this. And he'd say, yeah, dig, and it was just like,
right.
right. And that is kind of what it's like for Pluto Mercury.
Yeah, it's so funny that you use that one too, because I had a student who had Mercury and Scorpio, and she was having a hard time remembering like her planets and the signs and all. And she was an artist, right? I could see in the background that she had like her pencils and color. I go, why don't you draw it? She goes, that's so good. I go, draw it as like Mercury as a character.
Totally.
So she's like, all right. She's like, yeah. And I go, what do you think you're going to draw? And she starts telling me she's like going to draw Mercury in a swimsuit on the beach, whatever. And I'm like, girlfriend, that sounds like Mercury in Cancer. I'm like, Mercury in Scorpio needs to be in his wetsuit, got his tank on his
Yes.
back as he's diving deep, right? He's not afraid. He's not saying, kids, stay close to the shore.
Right, right, right. Very well said. Yeah,
And
exactly.
she was that opened up her thing of like just even understanding the difference between what a Mercury and Pisces, right? You got the three water, what Mercury and Pisces versus Mercury and Cancer versus Mercury and Scorpio feel like.
Exactly. Oh, that's the power of images. Exactly. And that
Mhm.
stays with you, right? Like that, like it stays with you too.
Yeah.
Like that came to you in the moment to just say it that way. And then the next time you see Mercury and Scorpio in a chart, you've got that image, and it might be
Right,
helpful in the next reading or not, or,
right, right.
but it's like part of what we're doing is we're creating mythology together, right? We're creating
Right.
new images that are appropriate to our time and that will accompany us as astrologers, because images and gestures and stories, that's what stays with people, like
Yeah.
that's what gives your imagination a bigger way to experience things, like using the regular language of keywords and psychological concepts or prediction or is fine, but it's people can get that in a lot of places. They're going to be able to get it from the AI forever,
Right.
like that kind of
Yeah.
astrology is just like easy to do, but this is a very different way, that
Right.
is it's very creative, it gives all these animals a chance to like show who they are and to live their instincts. They all have
Yeah.
instincts. you know?
And I think it takes it from like information, right? To the transformation, right? Because now living and feeling it, right? You're getting that therapeutic concept, right? People gravitate to astrology because they're trying to understand something, right? Whether it's understand themselves, understand their relationship with another, they want to try and understand something.
Right,
And they can't understand it from their logical brain, all right? Because they've already, their brain's already gone like this. So they're
right.
looking for another way, right? A different way to understand something.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
exactly.
right. And so now doing this is just, putting another layer on it,
Mhm.
right? Of actually going in and understanding. So whether people come to this workshop and they are the people who want to be, the starring actors in it, or they want to just be the observers, everyone's going to get something out of this. Because
Right. And everybody's way is welcome, because that's what we need in the psyche also, is every creature, right? We all have, my fifth house planets, they want to be seen and they love doing this. And I do this all over the world, with workshops and retreats and teaching. My fifth house planets love that. On the other hand, my fourth house planets would be just fine if I don't talk to, 6 weeks a year, I usually go on total solo retreat, to the Ponderosa Pine Forest in Colorado in the fall. That's what I do almost every year. And I'm
wow.
alone completely. Like those creatures get to have that time, So in the room that day, we'll have all types of creatures, right? And
Yeah.
that day, maybe a person who's usually more forward will be a little shyer, or and that is just right, because we'll be understanding where are we. And if we might look at the chart of that day or the sky of that day, and we might see, oh, you're holding you're holding the sun in Aquarius today, because the sun will
Okay.
be very late in Aquarius when we
Yes.
meet, or you're holding the Pluto, which just entered Aquarius. We'll see that in the room
Yeah.
also. We always do. But it's like we'll be bringing attention to that. And then part of the power is to, like, one way to think about that thing you said, like, people want an understanding, like, I always think of archetypes like electricity. Like, at the power plant, electricity is generated at like 880, really intense levels of energy. And, it has to be stepped down to like 440, 220, 110, so you can, use an outlet and power your machine. If you plug your machine into 880, it would blow up, right? It can't handle that. And
Right.
archetypes are like that too. Like, sometimes they come into our lives and completely, rupture things, the accidents, traumas. And then other times we try to shut them down to zero. A lot of times people are living at 880 and zero. That's what they know. And
Right.
astrology is this powerful thing where people come in with things being really big, and then the astrology is the transformer that actually steps it down to a level where you can make use of it. You don't want to turn it off, but it's
Right.
like, how do you put it into symbolism and talk about it creatively? And
Right.
we use electricity to do creative things, but we have to be able to do that. So in the workshop, sometimes we'll be amplifying it, like, let's bring it up a little. Let's show me Mars, and amplify that Mars a little, and they get bigger with the bow just to feel it a little. But then we'll also practice, how do you step it down and make it
Mm,
metabolizable, like something someone can
right.
experience. So we'll be working with that as well, which is a real gift for people with astrology to be able to do, to meet it at a potent energy, but also to be able to, bring it up and down, like that. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I was thinking that you're coming, this workshop's like at the perfect time when I think about the day, because we're going to have 5 planets in Aquarius, right? This is so out of the box, right? Compared to normal workshops that we see. We still out of the box because I think I know the sun and Pluto definitely, Mercury, Venus, and Mars, I think are all in Aquarius
Mm,
on February 17th when you will be live with us.
yeah.
And then the sun moves into Pisces like the next day. So it's like this is such
Okay.
a
Yeah.
perfect time, right? For
I know.
us to do something out of the box. So do something different,
Right.
explore stuff from like a different perspective.
Totally. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I am excited that's the case. I remember looking at that a long time ago as a chart when we set this date, but then I didn't remember. I haven't looked at it since. So yeah, that feels like it's exactly what I sometimes think about Aquarius is like it really asks us to uh, stretch out into new forms and move out of the way we've had it all put together and sort of say, okay, what else is going on here, and
Right.
how else can you experience it? So yeah, we will be in a real conversation with that.
It'll be
And
the perfect group, right? The perfect Aquarius group community, right? Well, our tribe of people
yeah,
there.
yeah,
So
exactly.
that's why if you're watching this and you're thinking like, oh, why is this one live and not recorded? And
Ah,
that's because, right? Like it had to be either, it was all zoomed and
yeah.
everybody was virtual, or everyone had to be there because there's such an important aspect of this type of workshop, right? Because it's so different for everybody to be able to be integrated there together.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I do this online a lot. I've a lot of online groups, people from all over the world. I mean, it can be really amazing. People from all over the
Yeah,
world participate and we can do some of it, of course. And actually, there are some things that you can do a little bit better in Zoom, right? Like you can have a
yeah,
large group, and if people are making art, everyone can see the art close up, which is very hard to do in a big group in person, right?
right.
Like, so there are some advantages, but the in person is just a whole other level, and it's so so alive, and our nervous systems get much more dosed in the material, like we get it
Yeah,
much more fully. Um, and in a natural way. And yeah, exactly. The hybrid model is definitely not work for this because it's too much to track. There's too much
yeah,
on. And the group will have its own magic. So that's what I love is that
yes.
I can never predict what's going to happen.
Right. Well, with all that Aquarius energy, it's going
Yeah.
to be definitely unpredictable. But we do know some things. We know we're going to be looking at charts. We're not sure which chart yet, but bring your chart, right? Everyone should bring their charts.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we're going to talk a little bit about the concept of the planets and
Yes, there will
you're
be
going
a bit, right. There'll be a little bit of a talk at the beginning,
to tell
just
us some stories, right?
exactly. Just to start to get a feeling of like, basically what we're saying in this is like, don't let the technique, decide. Don't fall for the idea that the technical can give you the full picture of the planet. Like learn its story from the inside out. And what we'll find, by the way, it's not to say we're throwing the techniques out the window because we're not. What you'll always find is when you get in there, it makes sense. The technique, but it's almost like it breathes new life into the technique. It breathes new
Yeah.
life into that. It's like those languages where they don't have vowels, they only have consonants. They have the bones of the language, but each breath makes the sounds come, the language comes
Mm,
to life. And that's the similar thing. We're breathing more life into those techniques. So we don't end up out of it's not just like free for all, like, oh, do anything
right.
you want, right? Kind of like when you said to the person who was doing the art, you were like, I don't think you're tuning into Scorpio here. Like I want you to be free in your expression, but let's just feel it a little bit more because so we're still within our astrology. It isn't just like we're going wherever. But it's actually breathing new life into it. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're going to give us different perspectives on those planets that people think are like uh maleficent.
Malefic or
And,
all of the above. And again, we're not going to throw it overboard. We're just going to
right.
say what does that mean besides good or bad? Like what's
Right.
good and bad is like it doesn't get you very far. So what's the planet's story? What's its secrets? What does it know that you don't know? And one of the ways, just say one more thing. you know
Go
I mentioned the ecology thing, and one of my favorite stories in the world is about when they reintroduced wolves at Yellowstone, Yellowstone National Park. So the wolves had been, hunted to extinction because they would eat the cattle and cause problems and to the farmers that lived around the park and stuff like that. And so they ended up reintroducing the wolves, and it had transformative effects on the park that nobody could imagine. So what happened is like when you brought in this so-called bad animal, right? Wolves were like
ahead.
predators, they're the
Right,
bad
right, right.
ones. Um,
Scary.
So they brought this bad animal in, and what started to happen is, like, the deer and the elk sort of moved away from some of the rivers and thinned out a little bit, which meant that a lot of plants started to grow again, which
Wow.
attracted then other animals in. And then, like, the bears are coming, and then they're shitting on the earth, and that's like the soil is being rehabilitated. And it even resulted in things like the shape of the rivers started to change, like, because
Wow.
the banks of the rivers would be more stabilized. And then there'd be these little eddies where all kinds of different life can live that weren't there. So the entire park, the ecosystems in the park had more life, more diversity, more complexity, all because of this introducing the bad guy back into the system. So it's very
Right.
similar in astrology. Like, when we bring in, or we let a planet have a habitat, when we give it a place in our lives, and we can start in these experiential ways, like just to give the planet a chance to, like, just be here in the room, it will transform the entire ecosystem of the life and the personality. Like, it shifts things that you couldn't predict because it's such a complex system. So I just wanted to say that, because that's kind of what we're doing. We're sort of saying, if who are the baddies or the problems, saying actually they probably have the thing that you need. They probably have
Right.
a gift. But they
Or
might.
like the red shoes,
Yeah,
right? Should we
yeah,
go, right? You always had the power.
right.
But I'm also, when you're talking, I'm also thinking about like how applicable that is to the transits. Like people get so nervous about having a Saturn transit or a Pluto transit. And that might be the wolf that needs to come in to revive everything.
Exactly. Exactly. It's not just natal. Like, it's very much a way to work with the transits, and then to begin to actually be in a conversation with Pluto, rather than just feeling like, oh, it's just putting me through all this stuff. If you see Pluto, maybe you do see an animal for your Pluto, or for the transiting Pluto,
Right.
or you feel like, an underworld opening is happening, or you've been transported to the underworld. Like, most heroes had to go to the underworld at some point, and which
Right.
ghosts do you need to talk to? And maybe you discover them in this workshop. Like, and again,
Right.
that can go to depth and intensities. It's not, we will work with it skillfully, so it's not overwhelming, but it is an opportunity to really, go in at a deeper level to, what might be wanting to happen. And Yeah, rather than to feel like it's happening to you, it's sort of like,
Right.
what's the conversation you can have? Not to deny that, transits are there. We're not going to be able to control it, but we will,
Right.
if we're in an active relationship. It's a very different thing. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know. I am super excited. I can't wait. Is there anything about this workshop that you think people should know about that we didn't talk about? That you're like, oh my gosh, I need to tell them this one more thing.
I don't think so. I think that, again, I do want to emphasize that there's space to be however you want to be in the group. Like,
Yeah.
that's everything's invitation, and I will give ways to do it that are, they're in different processes. I will give ways to do it that are bigger and smaller, so that people can just choose exactly where their comfort is. Um,
Hmm.
and So, there'll be space to make sense of it and integrate it, at the end of the
Right.
day. Um, and I think it will be fun, and just another way to experience this incredible gift that we've been given, of astrology and myth. Yeah.
Yep. And I love how you're gonna weave it all together, right? The astrology, the psychotherapy, the mythology, the dreams, the like, it's this concoction that's like,
Yeah.
I just can feel it. It's gonna be delicious.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's going to
Yeah,
be
it's nice.
delicious.
Actually, I think we've begun you and I in this conversation feels like that we're tending that field already. Like, we're starting to feel the field of it. We're feeling the Aquarian planets and what they might want to do. Where the energy of it is already emergent. Because really, the main thing this work is creating a space big enough, rich enough, storied enough, that these creatures feel like, oh, maybe I can say something today. Maybe I can, show something I didn't show to this person, or, So we're trying to create that space and then, engage it a little bit. So, yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Jason, is there anything else that I didn't ask you that maybe I should have, that people might want to know about you? We know that you live part-time in California and part-time in New Mexico. You come from a long line, a matriarchal line of people we're in astrology and the spirituality of it all. In a very religious area of West Virginia.
Yeah.
And how you've overcome, have you been doing this? This has been embodied in you since you were a young boy,
Yeah.
starting to play like you were just, made an astrology game, and all the kids were like, oh my God, let's do this, right? And then just one thing led to another, and you did things opposite. A lot of people go into psychology or some
Mhm.
type of therapy and then bring the astrology in, right? They
Mhm.
said that you actually were the reverse of
Sure.
other people, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And when
No.
you were telling that story, I was even thinking of they say Carl Jung, how he never took a patient unless, I don't know if it was a sister or aunt, someone casted the chart for him.
Mm, mm, mm,
To look
right.
at that,
Right.
I've
Yeah.
heard
No.
that story. Right?
Yeah.
So people don't even realize, the world out there of how this has really been going on for quite some time, and just how you've weaved it all together. So now you've taken a step further, right? You took the therapy, you took the astrology, but now you've like animated it.
Yeah, my passion is that it's the way we can live it. And like right now I'm doing this online group for 2 months on the Odyssey. We read a few books of it. We meet online and enact some of the stories, write from some of the characters who are not usually heard from. Like we let the
Ah,
servants, we ask what was Odysseus' servants, what would their story be that we don't hear in the myth, right? Or
right.
people make art of different moments, and then we also dance. We use and we might do a little bit of movement that kind of way in the workshop, where you're moving and then you realize, oh, this is, and I'm like, who's moving you in your chart, who's doing the dancing, and now what do you want to do? And and then people will sometimes, I'll say, okay, if you're dancing across from each other, don't tell each other which planet you are, just do it. And then afterwards you realize, oh my God, I was definitely dancing with Uranus was opposing Mars or whatever it would be.
Oh,
So
wow.
these are all ways in, and we can even, do that online. But no, sorry, I'm going on, but you had asked if there's anything else. Not really. I mean, I want people to know you're in good hands. Again, it's not a free for all. I've been
This
doing
is a
this.
safe space.
I've spent thousands of hours doing this. I also teach at a graduate institute for the last 10, 12 years that does experiential psychotherapy. And so I have developed this teaching philosophy and these methods, and I have a mentorship program and a training center for that. So it can sound like, I'm just excited to get in
Uh,
there because I am. But I do want people to know, like, this has method and technique. It does. It's just not the head-based technique. Like,
right. Everybody
and
is,
love.
and
It's also about love. I will say, like, people don't use that word, as we're shy of that word, but part of it is also about love. How do you relate with love to all the parts of yourself and our world? And
mm,
and love to me is not just like nice feelings about each other. It's really getting each other. Like, how do you
right.
really attune to and feel the inner experience of the other planet or the other person or the animal or the island or whatever you're relating to. And so we'll be practicing attunement, to those different energies, and how to help yourself. What makes a Venus feel felt, like,
Mhm.
or a Mars feel felt. Like a Mars feeling felt might look like being willing to fight with someone's Mars. That might be how their Mars would feel. Like, you get me,
Alive, right.
right? And other creatures need you to just be quiet and let them just, not have to talk much. So who knows?
I always say those are the ones that they want to be in the she shed or the man cave,
Right.
right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Totally. Exactly.
Like it's
Exactly.
okay. I tell them, I'm like, it's okay. They're allowed to go there.
Yeah, totally.
Right?
Right.
So people are in good hands, Jason. People have nothing to worry about. You've been doing this for many, many years. You're well trained in
Yeah.
all these different facets. And people could come even if they could come even if they're new to astrology, like you don't
Oh
even,
yeah.
right? Like this is for
Great
all
way.
levels,
It's a
right?
great way to get to know astrology. Like I've done it for a long time in Santa Fe, but it's always really wonderful when new people come. I used to do biweekly astrodrama group for like 8 years, and 20, 30 people or about 20 people usually. But there'll always be a couple of newer people, and they often, because they don't have all the preconceptualizations that we carry as astrologers about, oh, this is what this means. So they could just really get in there and just do what they did. And invariably it would make sense in the astrology. So very welcome. And it's a great way to taste astrology in a direct way and not just some astrologer telling you things.
Oh yeah, this is perfect. Yeah. So if you're listening and you don't know astrology, no worries because you're gonna learn astrology from a whole different perspective where you're gonna feel it
Yeah.
and you're gonna walk away with a whole just bigger picture understanding. So yeah, so I love that that can be enjoyed by all levels. So all levels, all ages can come February 17th in South Florida. We will be live. It'll be a live group setting with Jason. He's flying in. I hope we have good weather for him. So Jason, before we sign off, is there anything else that we should let them know? We
I
we
think we're
covered
good.
a lot, didn't we?
Yeah,
We
I think
covered, we're all over the place. We covered a lot. And so I hope that you all will join us and come have this amazing, amazing experience.
great.
Thank you so much, Jason.
Yeah, thank you.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye.